Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Jalen, and today I'm going to be doing my first installment in my book versus adaptation series where I talk about a book and I talk about its adaptation, whether it's a direct adaptation or an inspiration series or movie, and we just break it down. We talk about what was similar, what was not, some similar themes, and finally my opinions. So all of this is going to be my opinion. I would highly suggest that you watch the movie or the TV series for yourself or read the book and develop your own opinions about the adaptation and whether or not it's something that you would enjoy. So let's get right into the video. Today we're going to be talking about The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, the 1959 novel that has been known as one of the greatest horror novels of all time. And then we're going to be talking about its adaptation. It's a recent adaptation called The Haunting of Hill House, released in 2018 on Netflix, directed by Mike Flanagan. It's actually the first adaptation to actually take the full name of The Haunting of Hill House. There's a couple other Haunting of Hill House inspired adaptations. However, like I said, The Haunting of Hill House, the show, is the first one to take its actual full name. So I know the first thing that I always ask whenever a new adaptation comes out, and it's whether or not it's better than the book. Is the TV series better than the book? Is the movie better than the book? Or is the book or does the book trump all? And it's going to be a little bit hard for me to say that today just because the novel and the TV series are very different. The TV series, we're going to get more into the plot later, but it does follow a family of 7, while our Haunting of Hill House novel actually just follows Eleanor Vance, our main character. And so just from that, you can see how different these two plots are. However, they do have very similar themes and similar concepts that are carried over to the TV series, which is why I want to talk about it, because it's super exciting. So we are going to get into the plots next, and then we're going to be talking about themes, and then my opinions. So after the plot section, it is going to be a spoiler, so I will let you guys know when that is. But let's get into the plot and what takes place. So first, we have The Haunting of Hill House, the novel by Shirley Jackson. We follow Eleanor Vance, who is a girl in her late 20s, early 30s, and her mother has actually recently just passed away. Her mother was very ill and kind of crazy, and so after she passes away, Eleanor doesn't really know what to do next. She has lost her sense of freedom as she has completely given her life over to taking care of her mother, and now she's moved in with her sister and her sister's husband, and so she just doesn't know who she is anymore. She doesn't know what she wants, and so when she gets an invitation from Dr. Montague, a scholar who studies the supernatural and the occult, inviting her to come to Hill House and study what is going on and take some notes and see if anything is supernatural going on over there, she immediately says yes, because she's like, this is my chance to find where I'm supposed to do, where I'm supposed to go, and do something that I want to do. And so she goes despite what her sister and the sister's husband says. They're like, they don't want her to go. They're like, absolutely not. And she's like, you're not in charge of me. And so she goes, and immediately when she sees the house, she knows that this is not going to be good. And so we follow Eleanor as they spend, I think, maybe less than a week in the house, although it feels like a lot longer. And the house just begins to infiltrate her mind and kind of blurs the line between what is Eleanor and what is the house. And it is chilling, it is eerie, it is haunting. The end has you thinking about what happened and what you just read for like weeks after. It's incredible. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Now we're going to be talking about the show. The show, unlike the book, follows a family of 7, the Crane family. We have the mother's name is Olivia, then we have Hugh, the father, then we have 5 children. So the eldest is Steve, then it's Shirley, Theo, and then Eleanor and Luke. So as we can see, Eleanor is the same name as our main character here, and as I'll show you later, they are very similar characters. They go to Hill House for the main purpose of renovating and flipping it for profit so that they can eventually build their own home called their forever house. Obviously, they don't get to do that as really scary and horrible things start happening in the house. The children are terrified all the time and telling their parents of these scary things that are happening. And then finally, towards the end of their stay, their mother actually commits suicide in the house. And so the show actually has 10 episodes. The first 5 episodes follow each of the 5 kids. So they each get an hour and a half episode to themselves, all about how that childhood trauma has trickled down into their adult lives and made them who they are now, and why they cope the way that they do, and why they do the things that they do. And it is such an honest and raw depiction of grief and loss and childhood trauma and family and addiction, and it's incredible. It's incredible. So that is it for the non-spoiler section. We're about to get into the nitty-gritty details. So if you have not watched the TV show or read the book, I would highly suggest that you go and do that and then come back and join us, and so we can chat about what we noticed in the show and the book. But if you do like spoilers, then go ahead and keep on watching. You know, you're gonna do what you want to do. It doesn't matter. All right. Let's get into the spoilers. All right, so first I want to talk about the themes. Now, I did take some notes because there's a lot. There's a lot. So let's get in. All right. So one of the main themes that we see in the book is this fear of isolation and a fear of not belonging. And we see that specifically with Eleanor, our main character, as when we start the novel, her mother has just died, and when she's been taking care of her mother, she has found herself very isolated, not only from herself, but from her family members and from the outside world. And then when she actually starts living with her sister and her sister's husband, they treat her like a child, and she's a grown adult by now, and so she just feels isolated from everyone around her. No one knows what she went through with her mother. No one knows how she feels about everything. And so when she sees this invitation to Hill House, she's like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is going to be everything for me. It's going to be life-changing. And yes, girl, it is life-changing. It's also life-ending. And so, sorry, that was a good one. So we see this isolation, obviously, whenever she first arrives at Hill House, but then it's even more evidence in Hill House as she starts to get close to the other people that she's around. So the other people that are there in the house with her are Theo, Luke, and Dr. Montague, along with Eleanor. So 4 of them in the house, and they get very close because they're the only ones there. So they're just like, we need to stick together because I think scary stuff is about to happen. And so they all get very close. However, what the house wants is to isolate you. We see that in the show as well, but in the book specifically, it starts to get into Eleanor's mind, and she starts to feel like they're talking about her, that they're conspiring against her, even though that is the furthest from the truth. They actually care very deeply about her. However, the house doesn't let her see that, and probably it has to do with her past and how she has previously viewed her relationships. And so I think the house really fed off of that. As well as the house actually starts to like taunt her and single her out further, making her feel isolated because now no one knows how she feels. No one feels the horror and the terror that she feels just being in the house, because the house isn't coming after them how they're coming after her. And so we see that isolation just play out throughout the entire novel as everyone else kind of like tries to get close to her, but she doesn't let them. And then finally at the end, to her demise, when she is in her car and she ends up killing herself in the house, further isolating herself from the other people because they go on to live the rest of their lives, but she obviously does not. And so we see isolation also in a couple of the other characters, but I'm not going to get into that because that'll make the video way too long. But let's talk about The Haunting of Hill House, the show, and where we see isolation. So specifically with the kids, because the kids is pretty much the central focus of the show. But Steve, who is the eldest, after the mom commits suicide, and it's years and years later, he is now an adult. He is married. Well, he was, but they are actually separated towards the beginning-ish of the show because he does not tell her that he had a vasectomy and cannot have kids. And so because of that, he is not only isolated from her, but also from the rest of his family. His family doesn't know what's going on in his marriage. He hasn't confided in them in any of that. As well as he actually wrote the book, The Haunting of Hill House, in the show. And he profits off of the trauma and the pain that he saw in his siblings when they were kids. And so they do not like him after that. I know Shirley, who is the second eldest, she does not want to talk to Steve at all. She's just like, I can't believe that you are profiting off of our mother's death, off of this trauma that has changed all of our lives so much. And that really isolates him from the family as well. In addition to that, we see Eleanor, who is the youngest, and we follow her a lot in the show, but she's obviously our main character in the book. And she's very similar to this main character. She feels very alone and very isolated because she's the youngest. Her and Luke are twins, and they are the youngest out of the group. They actually experienced the most of the trauma and the scary things that were happening in Hill House, but none of their other siblings really believed them. None of their siblings actually validated their feelings and their fears, and because of that she feels very alone in that, and it's evident throughout the show. It's just a whole hot mess. After the house, they all get separated in a lot of different ways. Obviously the father loses custody of the rest of the kids, so they all go first to their aunt, and then after that they all get split up. So we see that isolation just from the very beginning, right after Hill House, and that was a tactic from Hill House. That's what the Hill House wants, because it wants you separated so that it can prey on you and eventually lead you back to the house, and that is exactly what we see with Eleanor. All right, so then we have Luke, another one of our characters. He is the twin of Eleanor, and we see his isolation in a very physical way, as he is now addicted to heroin, and so he is in and out of rehab centers, treatment centers, and none of his family members trust him. They think that he's going to steal from them because he has in the past, so that he can sell it to get money for heroin and all of that. And so we just see this huge rift between all of the family members, and it just gets bigger and bigger until finally a big traumatic event happens. Obviously we know Nellie ends up going back to the house, and she doesn't commit suicide, but something pushes her over the ledge, and she ends up dying in the house, and so that brings the whole family together. But even when they are together in episode 6, 2 Storms, they actually never really are together, because they have all of this emotional baggage and trauma, and that disconnect from the rest of their family members. So the entire time that they're supposed to be there honoring Nellie, who is in the casket dead, they're just butting heads the entire time, and it is just such a genuine look at family and family dynamics and the effects of addiction on families, the effects of trauma on families. It's incredible. All right, so the next theme, I can't breathe. I need some water. Okay, sorry. I just remembered something that I really wanted to talk about, because it was it just encapsulated exactly what I'm saying about this fear of isolation in Eleanor, who is our main character in the book, but also one of the characters in the show. And in this episode, 2 Storms, which is episode 6, which is pretty much where everything is kind of joining to. We get to the very height of everything in episode 6, as we see 2 parallels going on. We see a storm going on back in the day in Hill House, and then we see a storm going on at the funeral for Eleanor, and that whole episode is told through one take. We see the camera just completely just go around and flow through each frame, and it's so beautiful, such an amazing way to create that tension and that suspense. So what we see in Nellie is whenever Nellie they're all downstairs, and it's raining, it's thundering, it's lightning. They're trying to get all the kids together so that they can count to see when the thunder is and when the lightning is, to see if the storm's moving away. It's not going anywhere. And they look, and they're like, where did Nellie go? And Theo was actually holding Nellie's hand, and she's like, I just felt her hand. I just felt her hand. And when she looks down, Nellie is gone. And so they're all going around throughout the house trying to find Nellie. And finally, at the end of the episode, when Nellie is standing exactly where they left her, she's crying, and she says this. She says, I was right here, and I was screaming and shouting, and none of you could see me. Why couldn't you see me? I waved and jumped and screamed, and you didn't even look. None of you even looked. And that is isolation right there. And we see that's exactly how Eleanor in the book feels as well. I just love how Mike Flanagan used the trauma and the character of Eleanor in the book as a parallel, as a mirror character to Eleanor in the show, and it's just incredible. All right, so now let's get into the next theme. The next theme, which is the final thing that I'm going to talk about because there's just too much to talk about, is this search for home. And so we see this in the novel as Eleanor goes to Hill House because she wants to find freedom. She wants to find somewhere where she belongs, like I said earlier. And in that, she sees that Hill House could be her home. She finds safety and comfort in Hill House. Even in the very first night that they actually spend there, she talks about how this was the first night that she actually got like a good night's rest. And she's like, wow, I woke up feeling very rejuvenated. And she was like, that's really weird. I don't even feel that in like even staying with my sister and her husband. And so we see that the house uses that because it's like, oh, you think this is home? We can make this home for you. Just kill yourself outside and you could stay here forever, like happily ever after. And so we see that she's just searching for this place to find safety, to find comfort in. And she wants to call home somewhere, but she doesn't know where. She's looking for it in all the wrong places. First, she's looking for it in the physical house of Hill House, and then she's looking for it in the other members of the people that are there. So like, for instance, with Theo, her and Theo get very close, and she actually asks Theo to stay with her whenever they leave Hill House, and Theo was like, absolutely not. That is not gonna happen. And what she doesn't know, that was a major turning point in the novel, because after that, she's like, well, I guess Hill House is it for me, and that's what ends up, leading her to eventually kill herself. But we also see the search for home in the show as well, as that's the whole purpose of the Crane family actually going to Hill House in the first place. They are looking for a place to renovate, to flip, to sell, and then to eventually get that money that they use, because this is a very old antique house. It's going to sell for a lot of money because it's huge and it's like, vintage and everything and historical, and use that money to build their own forever home, someplace that they can just be as a family. And we see this forever home just like as like a constant in the show, but eventually in episode 6, I'm pretty sure it's episode 6, it's like towards the end of the episode, the forever home actually, like their make and model of a tiny forever home that's been shrined in Shirley's house actually gets destroyed by Olivia and like her like ghost scary being thing that comes and destroys the model. It was very scary, but we see just like that safety, that home that they all wanted, just getting completely destroyed. And then whenever they end up all back in Hill House is like, hey, it's me, you can live here, and they're like, no, leave me alone. And so we just see that theme of searching for a home in the book and in the show, and it's just so cool just to see what Mike Flanagan did. Like, it's masterful, honestly. All right, so now we're going to be getting into my opinions. All right, so I think that Mike Flanagan took a lot of liberties. I think that Mike Flanagan took a lot of liberties in the show. He saw The Haunting of Hill House, the book. It's only 233 pages, so it doesn't really leave much room to dive into anything super deep. And he saw this as a foundation and was like, you know what? I'm going to use this as a branch to branch off and tell a different story, but something that is very like reminiscent of this. Like, it's very, you can see all the similar themes, but he just expands it in this beautiful and intricate way. I also like that Mike Flanagan added that family aspect. I thought that really brought a nice connection to the characters, something that we didn't see in the book, because in the book we just have 4 completely separate characters all just coming to live under one house, not for any type of like connection purposes. And so because we have a whole family of 7, we get to see so many different dynamics, just loss and fear and trauma, but like how that all connects you as a family, but how that also can drive you apart. So I thought that was a really, really smart way for Mike Flanagan to tell this story. Also, I loved how Mike Flanagan touched on a lot of really difficult topics, such as substance abuse and what that does to family. So what I liked, and then I'm going to talk about what I liked, and then what I didn't like, and then we're going to end it because this is getting very long. So what I liked in the show was how Eleanor's character remained the same. So we have this inevitable fate of Eleanor. First, we have her smash into a tree and end up dying, and then we have her in the show where she eventually gets led to the house and then dies in the house as well. So I love how we we see that Mike Flanagan used Eleanor and just like kept her fate the same, which I thought was really cool. It's almost as if it was inevitable. It had to happen. We also see that whenever we find out that the bent neck lady was actually Eleanor the entire time, but Eleanor falling through time and scaring her younger self. So we just see that there was no hope. There was no hope for Eleanor in both the book and the show, because in the book, the moment that she stepped on the premises, you knew that this was not going to be good for her. It was going to be the end for her. And then for the show, the moment that that she sees the bent neck lady, I mean, it's just evident that like that's gonna be her fate. Especially because after we know how the mom kills herself. So I just loved how that was kept the same as well. Another thing was the concept of time that was kept the same from the book to the show. So in the book, the concept of time is it's very elusive. We don't know what day it is. Half the time, the characters think that like weeks have gone by, and then when Mrs. Montague comes and Arthur comes, they're like, well, it's Saturday. I told you I was coming on a Saturday. And they're like, it's Saturday? Like, what is today? Like, I don't even know. And it feels like the house just like, it's like never ending. Like everything is, okay, my camera died. So we're back. I don't know where I really left off, but I really liked a lot of aspects of the show. Period. And I really liked a lot of the aspects of the book and how those were carried over. I thought that was great. However, now let's get into what I didn't like. And honestly, I liked everything about the show. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. I thought that it was fantastic. However, well, yeah, because I loved it. I loved it a lot. And I loved how we saw a lot of character development, even from Theo. I loved it. I loved the dad a lot, and how he was a fixer, and like how you see those qualities in Shirley and in the other. It's just so good. It's so good. But what I didn't like, I really didn't like some aspects of the book, actually. I gave the book 4 out of 5 stars, and it's mostly because of the second half of the book. The second half of the book was, like, especially after Mrs. Montague and Arthur come around, they were so annoying. And I understand the purpose of Mrs. Montague as a character. Like, I get she was supposed to be, like, very rude to Dr. Montague, and that was supposed to be, like, her one vice. And, like, you're just supposed to see, like, that isolation that Dr. Montague feels, just, like, you know, reinforced throughout the novel. Like, I get it. But I could have done without it. You know what I mean? Like, I really didn't need her character, and I felt like when I got there, I was just ready for it to be over. You know what I mean? And I felt like it kind of like, I felt like it just took away from the story a lot, and I didn't really enjoy that. I didn't. Oh, another thing that I didn't really like was how we didn't get a lot of information on the other characters like Theo, Luke, and Dr. Montague. While I get why that was a thing, because we're supposed to, like, you know, that isolation and everything that Eleanor feels, she can't really get close to any of these people because the I don't know, the whatever Hill House is doing to her, just like doesn't let her get close to these people. But I just really would have liked a story, just to kind of see maybe like Dr. Montague and what he sees in the house, maybe like them seeing her like deterioration of like her mind and everything. Like that would be so interesting. Like especially that part where she was like walking around and like banging on the doors and stuff. Like that was terrifying. Like imagine that from their point of view, where they're just like, I know that's Eleanor and she's going crazy. Insane. Yeah, so that's what I didn't really like, but I get it. And like it was still really great for what it was. It was only 232 pages. What a light read. Like, we busted through it in, like, a day. It was still really good. So, I think that really concludes what I have to say. That's really it. I loved the show. I loved the book. I thought that it was just very well done. Such a good adaptation. One that took this and expanded on it and really branched off. And I thought that was so smart. It was so smart of Mike Flanagan to do, and he really he did so much. I loved it so much. There are so many things that I could talk about. I could talk about the individual characters. I could talk about the Red Room, what that was for each of them. I could talk about the ending and like the mystery, like did that actually happen? Because in the last scene we see that like red cake, and like every time we see red, normally we're in the Red Room and it's not really happening. Like what does that mean? Even though Mike Flanagan did say that was just like something they did, but it really ended good for them. Like there's just so much more that I could talk about just in depth about each of the characters and their growth as like as people and everything and their fears. Like I think that's so interesting to look at. Because it's very reflective of our own fears as well. Like I saw myself in a lot of these characters, and I love that about just how raw and genuine Mike Flanagan made these people in the show. But I don't want to make this video like 3 hours long, so we're going to end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys understood what I had to say, and if you want to comment below and tell me your thoughts on the book or the show or both, then I would definitely love to hear that. I hope that my love for the book and the show really came through and was evident in this video, and got you excited. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!